Hello. Everybody, it's 12:24 p.m. Central Time on the 10th of June, 2026. It's Wednesday here in the States, and I hope you're doing well. Just getting on really quick, I'm going to be making a video on this to show everybody what I found last night that's just absolutely phenomenal. People who researched the pyramids down in Mexico, also the megalithic structures, people research those. Also, earthquake enthusiasts might be interested in what I'm about to show you, and people who do research on marine biology as well as anthropology. So, in ancient societies and so forth. Look what I found. This is just phenomenal, and somebody has to know about this. We'll explain this as we go along. So here's the United States, and we're zooming in down on Florida, and I've showed this before in previous videos, this island here in particular. We're going west of Key West. Here is Key West, and then you look west and you've got Sunset Key and so forth. But the Marquesas Key here, that's the name of this, the Marquesas Key, I've showed several times before, and the reason I showed it is because of what's on the middle inside of it. It's a iguana. This is an iguana, and it has, well, they've carved this into the coral, first of all. It's submerged now, it's underwater. But back in the day, I would propose that this would have been above water, not underwater. But right now, you can still see it. But the imagery, we have to go back to 2017, 2018 to see it. The modern image, look, they've done a flyover, and you can't see it at all. Just so if you want to go search it, go back to 2018 or 2017 or before that. And it's carved into the coral. Now, the island itself is 5 sided. The backside somewhat weathered down and circular in shape or rounded, but you can see the flat back edge on this. This is that bastion fort shape that we've been talking about for years. If you're a longtime viewer of mine, you know about the shape. If you're new, just bear with me on this. This is pointing like an arrow to something, and we find these around the world, and I propose to you that these were built a long time ago by an advanced civilization of some kind that at least had the ability to build islands that are 4 miles long and 3 miles wide in a certain shape. Now, in the past, when I found this and showed it to you guys, we were, of course, finding that interesting, but I never bothered to see where it was pointing to. And if you just follow it, just draw a straight line out the back and go straight out across into Mexico, across the peninsula there, look where it takes us. It takes us directly into the corner side of Chichen Itza without a variation at all. But here's the mind-blowing part on top of that. Again, last night when I was doing this measurement, the reason we were looking this up, we were talking about Starforts and the things that we found in the past, which led me to bring up this. By the way, these iguanas were not in the United States hundreds of years ago. In the 1800s, the story is that iguanas were brought into the United States and Florida by chance through ships. So this is older than that. But where do the iguanas come from? Well, the same place that the arrow is pointing to, across over here, which goes over to Mexico and Central America. But the odds of it pointing to Chichen Itza on its own is just insanely, almost impossible to be chance. But then when I measured, I wanted to see how far it was from the island to Chichen Itza. So I got out the line measurement tool and I backed it out and I saw this. Look what's right in the middle in between Chichen Itza and the island. The 6.1 rare earthquake that just struck a day and a half ago, now 4.3 aftershock has also struck here. And professionals said they didn't know what was here. There's no known fault at the location according to professionals. But there is something there. Let's go back over to Google and just turn off the historical imagery and just look at it like we normally would. There is something here, but this is just phenomenal. We have to look at the Earth in a new way, which is the plate boundary down here that goes over to the east, across over into the Caribbean. Let's get the USGS plate boundary map open so you can see what I'm talking about here. Here's the marked plate boundary down to the south in the Caribbean. You see it, of course. And then we go out to the Pacific. We have the Cocos and Nazca plates to the west of South America and Central America, and then here's North America. But professionals said they didn't know of any known faults across this area at all. Well, what I found here is just as phenomenal as the island pointing to Chichen Itza. Let's go show you what I found, which is this. here's the plate boundary going this way, 15,000 feet deep. And then we go up in elevation up to about 5,000 feet deep. And then we come back down to 15,000 up here. And look, it's like a giant arrow or a L shape or a 45-degree angle. And this is going up to the north right to where the 6.1 is. And then it stops just shy of there, just beyond there, right here at the edge of the Florida Keys. And then it comes back down this way on the other side of Cuba. And let me just turn off all the place marks really quick so you can see this. So here to here to here. And it's a giant triangle shape. And at the very tip of the triangle is this. The six-sided, supposedly built during the Civil War bastion fort. But if you look, you can see where they busted holes in here to put cannons in the Civil War. And it's built in Byzantine style out of brick in the Florida Keys. The dry Tortugas, a few feet deep water. And that we're told this was built during the Civil War to protect the Gulf with the cannons. But the problem is that the Gulf is hundreds of miles and cannons only go a couple miles at the most. And the water there is only a few feet deep. There's no way you're even going to get ships up in there. And the story is that it was built in the Civil War. But I'm telling you right now, it's more like they found it during the Civil War. And it was already there. It wasn't built by the Spanish. The cover story on that is that it was built by us in the Civil War. But it's like a Christmas treetop at the tip of this plate that we're not admitting exists. The reason we're not admitting this plate exists, and professionals are vexed and won't admit that there's a plate boundary here, because that's what this is. Let's go back over to the USGS plate boundary map. There's the plate boundary to the south, going all the way over. Let me show it to you here on Google Earth. Here's the plate boundary to the south. You can see it. But clearly you can see there's another plate boundary that goes up this way and then dead ends into the south part of Florida. And then it comes back down this way. You can even see it here in the topography on the sea floor. It comes back down on the east side of Cuba, and it makes a giant triangular shape. So this would be its own plate. Now let's go back to the USGS map. So this, one more time, let me back it out, should be its own plate, and it would be the world's smallest plate. Now you could say the Juan de Fuca is its own plate too. At least that's what they say. They say the Juan de Fuca up here in the Pacific Northwest is its own plate, the leftover remnants of an ancient plate. And it's being subducted underneath North America, and that's why it's so small and right there. That's what they say. Well, they would have to say something like that about this down here, but there's no subduction going on. So it's a triangular-shaped plate. The earthquake struck along it, and it just so happens that the earthquake struck along it, along that line that goes from this island that I've showed you many times before on the bastion fort shape, this five-sided bastion fort shape. Now, before you get all weird on me on the bastion fort shape thing and denying that they exist, let me show you another one down here at the South Pole. This is Antarctica. And down at Antarctica, if you look around the outside edge of the continent, it's of course in white, but out in the plate boundaries, you can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sides again. It's that five-sided bastion fort shape again. But this is the whole continent of Antarctica. Again, it's indisputable. These are the plate boundaries. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's that same shape. Now let me show you another one. Over here on the west coast of the United States. And we'll just show you California. Oh, I need to turn off my place marks. Show you California. And the one that's built into the plate here is ancient. It's made of mountains, but it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Again, the same shape, and on the back side is the Grand Canyon. They flooded the middle of this with the Hoover Dam, and at the tip of it is Edwards Air Force Base, the military base, the bombers, and so forth there. And then out at the very tip of it is the San Andreas Fault. Look where the tip points. This is California now. The tip of it points right into Fraser Park. So what's going on here? This is a five-sided, 350-mile-long bastion fort that has the military in the tip of it. Then they flooded the back middle of it. On the right-hand side over here are all the nuke sites and Area 51 built onto the right side of this thing, and it's built into the plate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-sided. On the left side, corresponding to where the nukes are on the right, where Area 51 is, we go straight across over here. It's 29 Palms Marine Base and Bombing Range. So military at the tip, military on the left, military on the right, flood the middle, blown out on the back side. Now there's more of these. There's another one here in the middle of the United States. Here's Missouri, Oklahoma. Let me get that on the screen here, just so you can see your favorite state. Missouri's at the center of the screen. But there's another one built into the middle of the North American plate. Here it is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Same size, same length, 350 miles. And they flooded the middle of it with Branson. Out at the very tip of it is Fort Gibson. In the back middle of it is Fort Leonard Wood Army Base. And on the back right side is St. Louis, Missouri, with the St. Louis Arch. And on the back left side is the town of New Madrid and the New Madrid seismic zone. And on the back left side of this giant 5-sided 350-mile-long bastion fort that has the military in the middle and the tip, and they flooded the middle, there's another one. And it's only 6 miles by 9 miles, and it's 250 feet tall all the way around it. This is not from farming. These are foothills. And you see it. Again, it's the same shape, but there's something about this one at the very tip of it that's going to blow your mind as I zoom in. On the very tip of it, somebody knows. And they took the time to carve Trump Vance into the field there so that you could see it if you know about it to go look in on it. I don't know who's down there. Somebody knows that this 6 mile by 9 mile long bastion fort, ancient, 300 feet high basically. Now, if we go on the other side of this, is St. Louis, like I just told you, but there's a corresponding one in St. Louis, bastion fort. Let me show it to you. Right here, here's the city of St. Louis. We're facing north like normal, and it's built into the city streets. Now, this is on old maps from back in the day, from the 1700s. You can go find it on the old French maps from 1700. And this building in the middle is the Geospatial Mapping Agency for the U.S. government. But you can still see the outline of the 5-sided bastion fort here in downtown St. Louis, marked in the streets. I'll draw it out for you if you need me to. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And in the middle of it is the Geospatial Agency that does the mapping for the United States. Out at the very tip of it, they've done the St. Louis water towers. And on the ancient map from the 1700s, they've got a moat around this thing and water flowing down to the Mississippi River from this ancient bastion fort that used to be here in St. Louis. And the size of it from the tip to the back is 2 miles long by 1.5 miles wide. And the Geospatial Agency has to know. They're building their headquarters in the middle of it. So on the back right side is one bastion fort that's 2 miles by 3 miles, basically. And the other one is 6 miles by 9 miles. And they're on both back sides of this thing that's in the middle of the plate. And it is actually pointing somewhere that's very interesting. If you follow this all the way through, just like it's pointing like an arrow to something, it brings us down to here. Let me just make sure I'm matching that up. Yeah, see how we're going through that like an arrow, just like the island? Well, look where it brings us in at. It brings us out at the weird underwater. This is a place the UFO people talk about. This is 5,000 feet underwater, and the original explanation was that it was from bathymetric underwater measurements gone wrong or something. But then they did a new passover of it, and what did they get? The same results are similar. These are 200-foot depressions. But somebody was down there digging for God knows how long ago, thousands of years ago, back when there was no water there. But this thing points to there just by chance. That's the one in the middle of the United States, the one on the West Coast. There's more. There's way more of these. We could carry on all day about this. But I wanted to show you the one here in the Keys because it points to Chichen Itza directly. And that's a huge find. That island was built by the same people who built Chichen Itza. They were building giant megalithic structures, and right across the way over here, a couple hundred miles over to the east-northeast, 500 miles away from Chichen Itza, again, we get an earthquake along the way. But why did they do it? Again, why did they put a iguana? Why did they carve an iguana into the coral here? And look at our modern imagery. Again, when I showed this, this image was awesome. You could zoom in and see it. Now they've updated it, and look what they've done. Look at the updated photo. They're trying to hide the photo. So somebody somewhere is trying to hide this stuff. Then we find out that there's other islands around the world that are shaped the same way, and they're also pointing in certain directions. You know, one example is out here at Ascension Island. I showed in just the past few videos alone. Out at Ascension Island. Notice anything about the island? Again, it's not like it's a common island shape. It's, you go over to Rapa Nui. Another one is Easter Island, Rapa Nui, with the megalithics on it. But look at, and then you go over next over to Pitcairn Islands, or the Tahiti is another one, where they built them on purpose in a certain shape, pointing in the next direction where you're supposed to go. And then we get all the way over to Micronesia, and we could talk about those at another date. I don't want to, glaze your eyes over as we start talking about this stuff. But back to the biggest one. This one is the one that should just blow your mind, which is the five-sided bastion fort of Antarctica. And it's pointing in a certain direction. It's pointing to what looks like a waveguide into this. And look where it goes up into India, right? But did you know how big this is? How big is this from back here on the plate boundary all the way out to the tip? I've already done the measurement several times for people, but I've never put it into a video directly where you can just watch the video like this and we can measure. So someone has decided to come out here and get awesome underwater sea measurements 10,000 feet down of this undersea volcano right here, right in the middle of the plate boundary on the backside of Antarctica. When I say backside, I mean bottom side, because we're going to be measuring from the bottom here, right across the middle of the plate, all the way out to the tip. And as we go across the middle of the plate, you're going to notice we go directly over, just by chance, the middle of the exact portion here is the physical South Pole. The physical South Pole. Now, when we draw the line over it, it's going to bend because of the curvature of the Earth on Google. But let's go out to the very tip here and measure all the way out to the tip of the top of the ridge here. Now, to the top of the ridge, our depth there is 8,000 feet at the top of the ridge or so, 8,000 or 9,000 feet. And we go all the way down to like 14,000 feet, 13,700 or 13,800, something like that. So at the top of the ridge, look at our distance. This isn't me doing any funny business. This is including the curvature of the Earth. From that volcano on the backside, right in the middle, out to the very tip at the top of the ridge, look at our mileage, guys. It is 6,660.6 to the top. And if we measure down to the bottom, you can see the depth here in the lower right-hand corner. I'm going to move my mouse around and you'll see. We top out at like 13,700, 13,800. So let's go down to 13,700, 13,800. There's 13,400. Okay, I'm 400 feet off on depth. 6,666 miles to the bottom of the ridge. To the top of the ridge, it's 6,660. To the bottom of the ridge, it's 6,666 in length from back to front. And it points like an arrow to this, which connects in like an avenue to India. Now, here's where we go off the deep end on this stuff, but I'm going to show you because I promised my viewers I would show them. Again, we're not even trying to impress you or trying to convince you. I'm showing you what I found. These are the findings. So that five-sided bastion fort goes in and points into India. Now, look at this. India corresponds over to Russia almost perfectly. And this gets weird, real weird, because this five-sided bastion fort pointing like an arrow into the side of here, you should be able to notice that the outline of Asia and Europe is making a giant triangle. And that India matches Russia. But this is where we go even more off the deep end. Look at Saudi Arabia over here. Do you see that? Saudi Arabia and Yemen? Now look, conversely across from it, over here out in the Arctic, it's partially submerged, but you can see the plate boundary and the edge of the plate. They're matching, just like India and Russia. Saudi Arabia is matching the Arctic North. Then it gets even more strange. Scandinavia matches Turkey and Greece. It's just a little flooded in the Aegean Sea, but you can see it. They match. Then we get into Italy and the UK, Sardinia, and Ireland. Notice anything? They're matching each other again, corresponding points on either side as we come to a pinnacle tip at Spain and Portugal. And I'm going to zoom in on Spain and Portugal. Notice anything about the shapes of Spain and Portugal? Portugal's on the right-hand side, by the way, because of the way we're looking at this. These are mountains. And it rises 1,000 feet. We go from, let's turn on our terrain. We go from 200 to 300 feet above sea level to 12 to 1,300 feet above sea level. That whole thing on both sides. It's 1,000 foot high, giant bastion fort in the same shape, but it has two pinnacle tips off the, almost like a star. And this is the Strait of Gibraltar and the Rock of Gibraltar there on the left-hand side. In the middle is Madrid, Spain. Madrid, Spain in the middle. Out at the tip, there used to be ports here, from what I understand, and there were a series of large earthquakes back in the Middle Ages, they said, that knocked whole sections of that off. But anyway, you can see where the old tip used to be, and now it's weathered and broken. But that's like, again, the Christmas tree thing, the star on top of the triangular plate. Well, this takes me back to where I started, which was over here in the United States. Now look at the U.S. Same thing as Europe and Asia, but it's just smaller. But it's doing the same thing. Mexico, down here on the right, matching Alaska, and they're even curving the same way. Nunavut, over here on the left side or north side, that is up in Canada. Notice, Nunavut's tip matches, goes straight across over to Florida's tip. And what's down at Florida's tip? The BS cover story Starfort that's down there at the tip of Florida. And then that is the tip, like a Christmas tree, on this three-sided triangular plate here that's been hidden. The professionals said they didn't know what was there. Meanwhile, I can show you the plate boundary there that's in the shape. So North America is doing the same thing that Asia and Europe are doing, but it's just smaller. These are like 1, 2, and then look at South America. It's doing the same thing. It's weathered over time, but one edge goes out into the South Sandwich Islands. The other edge goes out over here into the Caribbean. And we zoom in, and then you'll see this was carved out a long time ago. It's a rectangular shape. And then you'll see next to it, there's another one that's carved out in the same shape. It's like a microcosm of the greater whole. Then we zoom in again, and humans now in modern day built a new port that goes in the same shape. Again, this is Venezuela now. We just invaded Venezuela, but they have, so it's 1, 2, 3. Do you see it? Human built here, letting you know the size of a giant port in Venezuela. But then you back it out and you see that somebody built this a long time ago, and that matches this. This is all submerged. This is the Caribbean. Who had the ability to sculpt and shape multiple 100 miles and how deep? 10, 11,000 feet deep. And then alongside of it, do another one that's somewhat smaller, and then a real size one that we would consider human built today. That's massive. But somebody had to build these a long time ago. And when you look at it this way, it's like the three pyramids. One big, one middle, one small, and then look what happens. We come back into the five-sided bastion fort of South America again. Now this matters because I'm going back to where I started, which is our rare earthquake struck over here in the Gulf of America, Gulf of Mexico. Professionals saying that there's no known fault and they don't know what's there. Meanwhile, there's literally a triangular shaped plate boundary where the USGS has deliberately left out. We'd have to come over here to the USGS map and draw our own red line that goes up here and then comes back down on the east side of Cuba. And that would show it to you. But they would then have to admit that there's a new plate there. Or, well, not a new one, but one that they missed or deliberately hid. And then that opens up the talk on that island and the pointing to Chichen Itza. Why are we hiding triangular-shaped things that are pointing to things? That's weird. We would just maybe admit that a long time ago, people were doing that kind of stuff. Whether it took thousands of people or advanced technology, I don't know. But it would take a lot of people to build a 4,000-foot wide island, or I'm sorry, a 4-mile wide island there in the Florida Keys 1,000 years ago. But it's weathered enough, and it's been there long enough, and it's got the iguana in it, which was supposedly only brought over to the United States in the 1800s. And nobody got out there in the 1800s and 1900s and carved an iguana in the coral underneath the water. Therefore, it was there before. And this opens up a can of worms on plate tectonics as well, because, I mean, we would have to ignore the plate boundary that's physically there, visible to the human eye. It's 15,000 foot drop off, and it goes up this way. And then you can see the other side of it over here, and our depth is 6,000 and 7,000 feet. 6 and 7 on one side, 15 on the other. I mean, I could see how they missed it, but it's so symmetrical, they'd have to admit there's a triangular shaped plate here. And why is it not subducting? What caused it to be there? All kinds of stuff. Now, there is one final point I'd like to make on this, and it's an actual point, which is we're going to turn the world this way, and we're going to look at the thing that the professionals missed. Again, the earthquake, just for reference, is right here. But let's now look at it without any of the place marks. And you should be able to see that there's actually something here that goes out into the Atlantic, and it's actually matched on the other side of the Atlantic over here, somewhat weathered, pointing into Europe. And that they correspond to each other and symmetrically, but they're broken down the middle, whatever plate used to be in between Europe and North America. And this turns plate tectonics on its head because, again, you'd have to admit that this is some kind of plate on its own, aside from North America. Going back to the USGS map, look what they have. They say this is all North America and that there's nothing there across the Atlantic. But I'm showing it to you now on Google Earth. There is something there going across the Atlantic, and there's an earthquake striking along it, and the professionals are going in vexed, can't believe it mode because they would have to admit that there's something there that they all missed. And then whether it's a triangular shaped plate here that they missed, or whether it goes all the way across the Atlantic over to the other side, I can't prove that, but I can tell you that one side of it here is well pronounced, and you just have to turn the Earth that way to really see it. The way we currently look at it, the Earth, is a little messed up, in my opinion. It might be permanently like that because, or they may have set it to look like this, I should say, so that we permanently don't see what it really looks like. That these were made a long time ago. Somebody had the ability to use cymatics to make these geometric shapes, and the military has to know because they're building their bases in the middle of them. This one here on the West Coast is the most pronounced on the West Coast. There's two more over to the east. The one on the left is the most pronounced. The two similar-sized ones to the east are way more weathered, and they have blast points in them, like Yellowstone on the backside, Salt Lake City on the backside. We have the Grand Canyon, Salt Lake City, and Yellowstone. Do you see those? Now, the Grand Canyon's on the backside of this one here on the West Coast that points to the San Andreas. The one in the middle is the hardest to see, but it comes up to a point right here beyond Pyramid Lake. Get the name? Pyramid Lake? But up here beyond Pyramid Lake, where do we come? This is the Sierra Army Ammo Depot where they dug out the bunkers and store all the equipment, tanks and all the other stuff. So the middle one's the hardest to see. The one on the right is actually somewhat easy to see. It's got a crater blown out on one side, but it comes to a pinnacle there in Oregon. But there's something there in the pinnacle. It's not a military base. It's something even worse. The Facebook and Apple data centers are there at the tip of this third one. See? Facebook corporate campus and data center, and the Apple data center. Why did Facebook and Apple build their corporate data centers at their corporate centers and their data centers at the tip of the third Starfort on the right? Why did the Sierra Army Ammo Depot put their base and their bunkers at the tip of the one in the middle? And why did the U.S. Air Force build Edwards Air Force Base out here in the middle of the tip of the third one? Or the first one, depending on which way we're going to go with that. And why did Fort Leonard Wood build their army base in the middle of this one? And Fort Gibson out at the tip with Muskogee? I mean, that sure is a lot of military bases to be putting in the tips of them, isn't there? Is there one in the tip of the one in Antarctica? Yes, there is. Antarctica has the South Pole at the back middle, but out here where we would consider to be the tip proportionally, there's the French Antarctic lands, and out beyond the tip right here is Diego Garcia military base. So somebody in the military has got to know, because they're building military bases in the tips of them and the middles of them. So that's your update. Actually, let's go back to the very start of this and just show you again one more time why I'm so mind blown about this. Because this island down here in the Keys, I showed for several years. I found this several years ago with the iguana carved into the coral. And then they started trying to hide it, the professionals, and Google, somebody had to tell somebody to do this, to upload the weird photography to hide what's there. But it's controversial. Professionals missed this bastion fort, ancient arrow-shaped island that's pointing directly to Chichen Itza. And then when you find out that there's a 6.1 earthquake directly along that line, again, I couldn't believe it last night when I zoomed in and I said, I wonder where the island actually points. The people in the chat room were like, let's find out. Go look it up. I go look it up and I just follow a straight line. And I go, hey, isn't this where the pyramids are? I had to look up where Chichen Itza was. I didn't know. I didn't have this place marked for Chichen Itza. I'm not into the pyramid thing at all. As a matter of fact, last night when I got on and found this, I told all my viewers last night, I don't know if I want to go on YouTube and even tell people. Because everybody's going to shit Twinkies. They're going to go nuts on me. They're going to just, it calls me into question. But then I zoomed out and I saw the 6.1 earthquake along there, and I freaked. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. What are the freaking chances? It's insane. So I would say there's a connection between the island and Chichen Itza. And if I was in charge, let's say I was in the military at some high level, I would send out a team of guys and gals, whatever. I would send out the hovercraft. I'd send out special forces. God knows what's under here. My God, there's probably something under here. Just a guess. I mean, there might not be. But I would certainly send out teams of people, VLF, earth-penetrating tomography, to look down in the crust and everything. And I'd look at everything from that island. And I would also send a team of guys and gals down to Chichen Itza to sit there with, I don't know, antennas of some kind and listen. Because there's got to be something there. There's some connection between the island and Chichen Itza. That's why the island is pointing to it. That's why the earthquake is striking along it. And somebody needs to look into this plate boundary thing down to the south. So help me God, if the USGS announces the world's smallest plate down in the Caribbean has just been found, they better call it Cincelandia, because no ego or anything either, but I got to leave my mark on the world some way, guys. All right. Now, much love. Thank you for listening to this. Again, you should be mind blown. If you're researching, or if you know anybody who researches the pyramids, which is such a weird topic, and again, it gets into the ancient civilization stuff. What's his name? Steve Quayle. Somebody get a hold of Steve Quayle and Timothy Alberino. L.A. Marzulli, I'll be on your next video. Much love to everybody. Seriously now, it points down to Chichen Itza. There is no chance on that for being chance. Especially with the iguana carved in the middle of it. And them trying to hide it now with the new imagery. Come on. Previously, when I found the iguana, people told me I was seeing shapes. Oh, and now is it just by chance pointing to Chichen Itza? There's nothing else beyond it. It's literally pointing to the pyramid. It's 500 miles away, and it had to be built by the same people who built the megalithic structures. If they could build megalithic structures in the middle of rainforest, guarantee you building a little island that's 4 miles wide is not that big of a deal for them, I guess. But that then opens a can of worms on so many levels on ancient civilization. It also opens a can of worms on plate tectonics. And it opens a can of worms on that giant starfort that's there at the edge of the Florida Keys, which they created a cover story for, saying it was built during the Civil War. It's all a bit much to take in. And then when you take into account Antarctica, the plates, I mean, how do we explain Europe being a perfect match of each other all the way up to the pinnacle tip, and the starfort being in the whole countries of Spain and Portugal? We are told in modern times that Spain and Portugal are the people who invented the bastion fort. So, yeah, somebody's creating a cover story somewhere to try and hide this stuff. This gets into secret society stuff. This gets into conspiracy level. But there really are secret societies that have very powerful people that have controlled pretty much the whole educational world and governmental world. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they were trying to hide that stuff because it's advanced civilization outside of them. And I don't really know how they feel about admitting that. I mean, they tore down all the mounds in the 1800s and 1900s to get rid of evidence of the advanced civilization in the United States. The mounds controversy from the mid 1800s. Go look it up. All the naturalists, which are what we would call scientists today, tore down the mounds. They said there was no advanced civilization and the mounds were just effigy mounds and tear them down. Why tear them down? Well, they were huge pyramids. That's why. They couldn't have built them in the 1800s, even with the steam shovels and everything. They looked at it. They thought, oh my God, this is advanced civilization far beyond anything we know. We better tear that down and deny it. And that's exactly what they did. So your history is a lie, but are you surprised? All the people who brought it to you were liars. I come along, I start finding stuff, they start denying it. Just chance, just shape over and over again. Just chance on the pyramids now. I can hear it now. Oh, it's just chance. Yeah, we dismiss that chance stuff. We throw chance out the window now because of finding so many examples of the military bases in the tips of most of these. The earthquake striking along them is another sign that something really is going on there. I mean, I wouldn't know about any of these if I did not first see the earthquakes there. I was shocked to see the 6.1 there in the Gulf of America, or the Gulf of Mexico. It's going to drive people nuts. You say Gulf of America, but there it is. Much love. I'm saving this as a video and we're going to upload it to YouTube. Strictly about the Starforts and my find down at Chichen Itza. Peace out.